It's hard to organize thoughts sometimes, or at least I find it most difficult when trying to construct something that thoroughly examines a thing I enjoy. I feel like I always start these things this way actually. I'm sorry if it's become repetitive. It's just something I feel I have to explain. To me, there is a genuine hypocrisy to cementing your ideas in some format. In this case, this video will eventually become hypocritical. Evolution, in my opinion, is the very state of nature, and much like that, much like it has been since the release of the Callisto Protocol, my opinions and feelings on this game continue to evolve as I try my hardest to properly answer for myself if I actually, truly enjoy this game.
Shocking footage from Europa. A brazen attack by the Outer Way terrorist group, led by the notorious Danny Nakamura.
That's enough. You got a job to do.
This is Callisto Hangar Control to UJC Caron. You have cleared the security perimeter.
Roger, hangar control. Laying in course for Europa Station. You got something to say? You gotta keep flicking that thing all day.
I was watching that.
It's our last run, Max. I'm done talking about it.
Then what do you want me to say?
How about thank you? Because after this job, we're never gonna have to work another day in our lives.
Well, I guess you got it all figured out.
I guess so.
Come on, man, what is this? Huh? Back and forth, Callisto to Europa, all this additional security.
It's a prison moon, Max. They take the security pretty serious.
And what about the attacks? Huh? How do you explain that?
By the Outer Way. They've been hitting targets all over the sector for the past 6 months.
You got a yellow light in the cargo hold.
It's probably nothing.
Well, it's still worth checking out.
You shouldn't worry so much, you know? You live longer.
Port and starboard sensors are both showing errors. Go check them out.
I'm going.
The game starts off immediately. That actually doesn't make much sense, but after a brief look at the rendered brilliance of our two co-pilots and the obvious tension that's been building as a result of their recent deliveries to and from both the prison moon Callisto and the colony outpost named Europa, the latter having just recently experienced a seemingly orchestrated bioterrorist attack, the game immediately gives you control of Josh Duhamel's Jacob Lee. The visuals are spectacular. On a PlayStation 5, the ray-traced shadows and lighting accurately lace the setting with this believability that for me personally, for once, feels like an actual justification for the 30 frame cap that a lot of these ray tracing features require on console. The game is beautifully sci-fi. The living space that Jacob and his co-pilot Max share is gloriously detailed, boasting a mix of personal articles like empty coffee cups and cans, posters, plants, and just this overall messiness that accurately conveys the reality of two men and the condition of their living space if they spent weeks at a time ferrying cargo through space. I have been tasked with checking on the special cargo, but the introduction to this world being this van life-esque spaceship does wonders to ground me in what will be the environments and their continuous believability. There is no traditional HUD, and although wishing that the prompts themselves were also integrated into the in-game HUD, its presentation fuels immersion. And as I move through the ship, eerily creeped out by the vastness of what seemed initially like a fairly small vessel, I find the cargo intact. Alongside that though, I find our vessel has also been boarded, leading to this wild depressurization scene, and this epic crash back onto Callisto, seconds after we are denied permission to land.
Jacob! Mayday, mayday, mayday! This is UJC Caron! Returning to Callisto! Requesting emergency clearance!
Negative, UJC Caron. You are not authorized for re-entry.
Sorry, but I got no choice! Coming in hot! Who's the antigraphs? Already at maximum! We're not gonna make it! Yes, we are! Watch out! Hold on! Brace for impact!
This introduction goes hard, and by this point I was completely sold. My friend slash coworker was dead, and I was being taken to prison for some odd, unexplained reason. I seem innocent. A terrorist, the leader from the group in the opening cutscenes broadcast no less, is the reason we crashed in the first place, and on top of that, some Dead Space, Last of Us shit is going on in the prison all of a sudden. My genuine assumption after this intro was that the sole mandate would be escape by any means necessary. And while that is the path the narrative takes, its use of tedious objectives as a way to move you through various parts of the prison to facilitate an escape, coupled with environmental design limitations that fail to fully utilize the stealth system and fail to allow the genuinely engaging combat system to reach its full potential, ultimately result in an interactive experience that feels shallow, half-baked. I feel like these words are a little too harsh. The game just doesn't feel fully realized to me, which sucks because there is so much that it does do right. Like the clever use of 3D audio tricks like whispers to facilitate fear.
Jacob.
Fucking A, man. I actually find the overall audio presentation marvelous. Sirens blare violently. Doors boom when they open and close. The soundscape is just unmistakably science fiction. The orchestration of all these sounds results in a cacophony that immediately hammers down a genuine sense of fear, and coupled with the game's minimalist score, it helps add a foreboding atmosphere to an already oppressive prison environment. There's this cool thing with the DualSense controller where you can literally feel enemies crawling in the walls around you, allowing for this ability to pinpoint exactly where they'll emerge from.
What the fuck is that? Whoa.
Which in my opinion is just this incredible showcase of the DualSense and the many possible implementations of its haptics. The combat in my opinion is visceral. Each hit has weight behind it. The random controls make it so that it's always unpredictable, making each encounter feel like this frantic fight for like survival. There is so much this game does that I love, but again, almost all of it feels so shallow, and it leads to this feeling that the experience, in its entirety, is just unexplored potential. To me, there really is an okay story here. Despite people's complaints, I love everything about the combat system. The prison is a fantastic setting. Jacob himself is a decent enough character. But in totality, I feel the culmination of all these okay aspects lead to a decent game, but also lead to a horror game that unfortunately suffers from the one thing it desperately needed to be. Despite the audio, the gore, the jump scares, the really cool haptics, the score, the Callisto Protocol honestly isn't that scary. Oddly enough, I feel like there is an easy fix to what most of the game suffers from. They should have just let us play as Karen Fukuhara's Danny Nakamura, but that's just me. Alright. Alright, we're gonna try and get this out as quickly as possible because like I genuinely struggle with these freestyle sections. But just wanted to expand on a few things that I said in the video. So first off, right, part of the reason why I think playing as Danny would be far more beneficial for the experience is I do feel that Danny as a physically smaller character than Jacob, right? Danny as a physically less capable from a strength perspective character in comparison to Jacob would facilitate a lot of, shall I say, different player decisions. And I feel like I gotta go into a little bit of explanation with this, right? So, Jacob, right? And I feel like I gotta explain that I'm really not trying to shit on Jacob, right? But Jacob is this amazingly grounded character. Like he feels so cemented in his environment, right? Every single one of his movements feels like hefty. There's weight to it, alongside with like how like heavy every single one of his swings feel, right? It makes it so that he is fun to play with, right? And I don't know whether or not the developers realized it, right? Because of how fun he is to play with, it kind of removes the fear that you should feel every single time you are confronted with a combat scenario. And that's kind of where I feel like playing as Danny would kind of like fix that. As a smaller character, just on a physical front, right? I feel like it invites the player to rethink how they engage with combat, because you know you are playing as a small character, someone who, comparatively speaking to the biophages, the infected human beings, is smaller, and thus it makes sense why the over reliance on the stun baton is a thing throughout the game, because law-wise, it could be that that is the only reason why Danny can go toe to toe with the biophages, right? And I don't know. For me, I feel like that would have changed even the way you engage with like a lot of the environment now. Where, you know, do I stealth past this section? Do I try and take out as many as I can with the little bit of ammo that I have, and then hopefully the ones that are left are like enough for me to take out with my stun baton without getting overwhelmed. Like, I feel like that's one of the things that could have really fixed the fear element. But another thing that I feel like also should have really been like considered is environmental layout, because the environments are lovingly detailed and all of this beautiful stuff, right? But alongside that too, they're very linear, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but they're built in a way where there's not really any ability to have agency in how you engage with combat encounters and all that, because each combat encounter will always result in you getting seen. It will always result in a outright combat scenario, which it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I feel like that's another thing that removes the fear thing. You always are aware that you're going to have to get into some kind of open combat scenario, and there's no way to reestablish stealth or anything like that. And I feel like it ruins the ability to be afraid in the Callisto Protocol. But that's just me. That's my 2 cents, and it's fun to dream.